So I am up to my first mash temperature. I'm doing a 3-step mash today. This is to help with the acidity. I do a 40 degrees mash with just the wheat malt. So I've got 500 grams of wheat and 500 grams of torrified wheat. You'll have to Google that yourself. I can't explain exactly what torrified is, but anyway, in that goes at 40 degrees. Don't have to be too careful at this stage. Just bung it all in and give it a bit of a stir. Only a kilo. There's 20 litres in there. Actually, the system says I only need 17, but I know this system, it needs a little bit more water for that. So I'm just going to turn you off and give that a stir and carry on. So next into the mash at 50 degrees, I will be putting the porridge oats. This is a beta glucan rest. I find it does help with the oats and the wheat to kind of stop a stuck mash, but we'll see how that goes. I'm putting a full kilo of oats in today, which is more than I usually do, but it does add a good mouthfeel. So, and I want this beer to have a really good mouthfeel, kind of a thicker feel in the mouth rather than a kind of a watery feel. This is my main bulk of my base malts here. There's quite a few base malts in here. Most of this will be pale best malt, which I had 2.5 kilos left of this. There's a bit of Vienna malt as well. A kilo of Vienna is in there as well, and I also had 500 grams of lager malt left over from my previous wheat beer, and I know I'm not going to make a wheat beer or a lager for a good few months now, so I didn't want it just sitting there in an unopened package, so thought I'd just bung that in. It is a base malt. This is my second attempt at a Biere De Garde. It's kind of an ale from the northern part of France. Pretty similar to some of the strong Belgian ales as well, but it's more of kind of a Normandy way. I don't suppose they brewed it in such large batches previously. It's a strong beer, so I've got a bit of sugar there just in case I don't hit my final gravity. That will depend on my efficiency. I can usually get about 70 to 75% efficiency on my Karlstein, no problem. I think I've had it up to 82% efficiency for a smaller batch once, which was amazing. So that will be going in at the 67 degrees mark, which is a high temperature for a mash. 65 degrees, you'd get a better fermentability and a crisper ale, but I want something with a bit more sweetness to it, so I up the mash by a couple of degrees centigrade to keep a few unfermentable sugars so the yeast can't eat them and you still keep that sweetness in the ale. It worked last time, so we'll see how this one turns out. That's just my ferulic acid rest going at the moment there. So a little bit, 41 degrees, a little bit higher than perhaps usual. I find that this Karlstein does fluctuate the temperature quite a bit, within 2 or 3 degrees sometimes, which is not ideal when you're trying to build a recipe. But for this ferulic acid rest, it's not a big deal. Anywhere between like 38 and 43, I think, would probably work for this type of rest. So anyway, 5 minutes in, another 15 to go. Okay, we're up to the 50 degrees centigrade now, Biere De Garde. So in go me porridge oats. Now you notice I'm not using any special particular oats from any special homebrew shop. Any malted oats or something. Porridge oats are absolutely fine. Rolled oats, flaked oats, whatever you've got. We're going to have to give that a stir. Let's see if I can do that one-handed. Probably okay at the moment. Yeah, not too busy in there. So give that a good stir around. Got the pump going to bring up any debris that gets through my mesh at the bottom and ending up onto my heating element. Should get sucked up by the pump and put back on the top. You do have to be careful as you add more grain that the mash isn't getting stuck in the filter and all the water ends up on the top. Then you burn anything to the element underneath. So as I add more grain, I generally turn the pump down a little bit, so it gives it time to drain as the water is pumping through, especially with things like oats and wheat. You've got to be really careful. You can usually hear underneath if you start hearing the dripping, you know that there's an air gap or some sort of gap underneath where it's making the noise of dripping. But you've got to listen out for that. Okay, so we are about to hit 67 degrees mash temperature. So we need to get this barley in there now so that it has the full hour. Now you need to start being more careful when you're putting this stuff in now, because you will eventually clog it all up. Keep an eye on the pump, maybe even turn the pump off after a few spoonfuls. I've got to put this down so I can stir this in and I won't get dough balls, but I'll be back in a second. There we are, we're just stirring in the last of the grain. Incidentally, I forgot there's also 600 grams of Crystal Light in here. Last time I used a kilo of Munich malt, which is lovely. I have got Munich malt in stock, but it's not open, and the Crystal Light was. So I've put that in as I was missing carapils as well. So I thought I'd just use up what's open rather than opening new bags of fresh ingredients. So that's why that went in. Anyway, that's pretty good. This is going to be a 40-litre batch. That's 20 litres of water in there. I generally do mine 50-50 sparge and mash water, although most people would probably go for a higher percentage of sparge. But I like this Karlstein because I think I might be able to remove that top bar when I do come to sparge later. So we'll see. We'll give this an hour now. I think we've got 53 on the timer. I'll probably add it back up to 60 just because that's just when the last bit of malt went in. Another thing to be wary of there is my mash tun is recording at 68.9 degrees centigrade somewhere at the bottom, so it's probably not heating that anymore because my target is 67. But on the old digital thermometer there I've got in, it's 63.3, so I've actually got quite a low mash temperature, and that's measured in there kind of in the middle of the mash. So although the Karlstein is saying I need to cool down, actually I think I kind of need to heat it up a bit. Probably what I'll do is get that water circulating a bit quicker, and then see if we can get some better average temperature from the top to the bottom. So I've taken that central arm out and I put a tea strainer over the top of it to stop the bits going down the middle. And now let some of the water back out from the bottom. It should, if it overflows, it will go down the hole there, so it shouldn't burn the bottom of my machine. Temperature is still pretty low on that though, so it's a bit worrying that they're so wildly different. Okay, so I had to pause for a minute there. I brought the grain bed out. I put this other mesh on top and the tea strain on top of that to stop stuff going down it, and now I can start pumping the water again. And there's an overflow now that it will go down there, and the grain shouldn't follow it because of the mesh and the tea strainer. That tea strainer is an addition that I've added. It's not ideal, but it does the job. Right, let's see if we can get a more of a stable temperature. We're still here reading 68.5 up on the Karlstein. We're not going to be able to get into the mash so much here, but we can drop it in there and turn the machine on. Yeah, and hopefully we're going to have a more stable temperature of the mash. Here we go now. No, we're way higher actually here on 69 now, so my Karlstein is not sticking to this 67. We're 2 degrees at least above it, so if I manually pause that, let's hit the where's the temperature, take that down to 66. And then I might even add a little bit more water, we'll see. So our mash pH here is looking a good 5.5. I'd like it a little bit lower than that, not by much, just maybe a 0.1 lower, maybe kind of 5.3 would be 5.3.4. It's getting towards 5.4. This is probably because I did a fluoric acid rest with the wheat at first. Normally my mash would settle about 5.8 with just barley. So, although I don't do a fluoric acid rest on the barley, only on the wheat. I'm not going to go into too much detail at the moment. That is still at a temperature of 47 degrees centigrade, so 5.4 is pretty much in the range actually. I don't think I'm going to need to add any lactic acid to this at all. pH meter has been calibrated with calibration fluid, so don't worry about that. So I don't know if you can see that in the light here with the backlight on it. It's pretty luminescent. So anyway, there's 1 minute to go here. We are mash temperature of 67.4. Not really worried about that last minute. We're going to go up to mash out now at 75. So I want to pause that, which will be the last minute of it anyway. I want to get the temperature up to 75. 2, 3, 4. And of course, because it hasn't stopped, I need the timer now to go up as well. Now this is going to be maintaining all the way through my sparge, and it's going to take me an hour to do the sparge, isn't it? So I'm just going to start that off again. The 60-minute timer has already started, the 1 minute's done, so I would say that was mash over. I'm now going to pull the grain basket out and let that drain. And there's the Karlstein grain basket sitting up on these little hooks here, all the way round to hold it out of the mash tun. And there it is draining. This little handle is detachable, don't need that in it anymore. I'm going to let that drain through the grain bed, sorry. I'll take that other mesh out, the top mesh, and then we're going to go sparge on top, which is basically dripping water onto the top there. My sparge heater is almost up to power at the moment. I've got 16 litres in there. I actually need 28, so I'm going to have a break while I heat up a second batch, or I might go and boil the kettle, we'll see. So what is this contraption you're probably looking at here? This is my new sparge arm. I've modified it a little bit. Well, the first one I received didn't spin. All the water just kind of poured out in the middle. It came with one of these Perspex holders and the sparge arm and the tube. Anyway, I wrote to the seller, and they immediately dispatched a new one, saying that perhaps my one was just a bit stiff, and I'm really thankful that they did. I can't get them to spin on their own, but because I've got two, I have now managed to have two of these Perspex holders as well, and it keeps this arm much straighter in the middle. This block of wood I've just stuck in here to get some distance between the two bits of Perspex, keeping this arm straight. And now when I turn on my sparge heater, I'm sparging the grain. Look at that. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. And now we're coming up to the boil, just raising the temperature into the late 80s at the moment. Can I say about that really? It's just a waiting game. I have got the pump on. There's 43 litres in this container now, which is exactly what the Brewfather app says I should have after all the sparging is done. The pump actually pumps just below the surface a little bit, well, just above the surface, just above, but that doesn't matter too much. It's just recirculating stuff, trying to get things off the bottom so that they don't get stuck to it. We don't have a burn. I'll give that a good stir actually in a minute. The only problem with this volume, as it were, is I put the lid, if I need to rest the lid, it sometimes sits in the beer, but anyway, I'll give that a good stir, make sure nothing's stuck on the bottom. Okay, we're getting very close to boiling temperature now. You can see that the head is building. One thing you don't want to do at this point is put your hops in. You could end up with a nasty boil over, and this is hot sugary liquid. So you want to wait till after the hot break, which is when you can start seeing the water again. Some people take this layer off. It's a kind of layer of protein. But dissolved proteins within the beer actually improve the head retention, so I leave it in and just maybe give it a stir now and again. So I'm 45 minutes to go. The boil, the first 10 grams of Cascade and Mosaic went in, started the timer. I just chucked them straight in. I used the hop spider to put a bit of sugar in, wondering whether I'd hit my gravity or not, but by the time I cooled the wort down to test the gravity, I just thought it'd be pointless, so I put the hop spider in, I chucked the sugar in, it had a right mess, it wouldn't drain. I didn't video it, but there is sugar in this brew to up the percentage, up the ABV, and also maybe dry it out a little bit. I'm getting enough mouthfeel and sweetness from the mash temperature and the oats. So that's the first hop addition done. I've got 2 more hop additions sitting here waiting to go in. I've got 20 grams of Cascade, 20 grams of Mosaic, and 18 grams of Cascade and 17.5 grams of Mosaic. Bit of an anomaly there. I'm about, a couple of grams short on each, but that's just the way it's been weighed and sent to me. So my scales are pretty decent actually. So it's not the first time that I've been shortchanged on hops. 4 grams are going to make a big difference. Nah. So this is my next hop additions, the 20 grams of Mosaic, 20 grams of Cascade. I originally planned to put it in 10 minutes to go. That white stuff you see on top is the yeast nutrient, 1 teaspoon. And underneath that, I don't know if you can see the kind of brown stuff, there's a bit of Irish moss in there which helps coagulate the proteins and get a cleaner beer. I don't know if that works because I've never tried it without it. So it is suitable for vegetarians though, seaweed, just in case. I am actually going to move this hop addition forward to 15 minutes. As I said, my other hop addition was a bit shy on the numbers, and I do like the 5-minute addition. It's one of my favourites when I'm not dry hopping. So I'm just going to move this one forward, bump up the IBUs a little bit more, get it above that 30. A little bit outside the Biere De Garde range, but it's always good to have a little bit more. Hops kind of die over time as well. Here you can see that I have my wort chiller here set up, ready to go. I'm going to start cleansing that at 10 minutes to go. So I'm going to start pumping it through this pipe up here, which joins the top of the wort chiller, widdly widdly widdly, and out the bottom. And at the moment I'm just going to pump it straight back into the pot, but once I've sterilized it with the boiling wort, I will be pouring it into these fermentation buckets. I'm going to pour it directly into the fermentation bucket. Both have a gauze inside for transferring it out without the trub. I'm not expecting too much trub. I think I can get away with it. These taps are quite high on the bucket, whereas passing it through a third bucket on its way is just another risk of infection. So I'm good with this. And that's the 15-minute mark. So let's take this hop addition and pour it in. Yeast nutrient, hops. Oh God, it loved it, didn't it? Yum, yum, yum. And there was a bit of Irish moss in there too for the coagulation. No, anti-distinctly minty. Okay, to coagulate the proteins and help the beer be brighter. How was that? Here's my counterflow chiller at work. A lot of air bubbles in it still coming out. I'm not sure if there's any particular direction it all has to go. I've just chosen beer from the top to bottom, thinking that one day if I brew off the ground, then I can gravity feed it out the tap through the bazooka. But it doesn't seem to matter. It's all coming out. Yeah, you can see air bubbles going all the way through it there. They're all coming down and out. So that's not going to be a problem. This is just to sterilize it at this point. And boiling wort is one of the best sterilizers there is, really. So my first mistake was using a garden hose on the outlet of the water. This water is going to come out piping hot. I'll probably need to exchange that for something a little bit more heat resistant. So I've replaced the garden hose with something a little bit more heat resistant there. It's not as long, so just going into my bucket to collect my cleaning water. Still got this drip going on this hose lock. Don't like those hose locks myself, but this is the kind of way I've rigged it up with the equipment that I've got. Just continuing to sterilise that tube of the hot wort, and we got 1 minute left to go on the boil. So the counterflow chiller is almost done here. Haven't done much of the video because it's taken a lot of adjusting the flow of the water coming in, and obviously the flow of the wort coming in. I've slowed this down quite a lot. I had the first batch come out from 95 degrees boiling down to 22 degrees. I've just put it over here actually, and it's reading 25 on my Inkbird at the moment. The Inkbird thermostat is attached to it, so my digital one said 22, but 25 is okay. That's yeast pitching temperature. So this one's coming out a bit higher. It was 40, so I stemmed the flow, and I brought in a bit more water flow. This is how much water I've got through so far, almost the full bucket. I was hoping not to go much further than the full bucket, which is probably twice the amount of beer. And people say, oh, what a waste of water. Well, if you put that in the bath, it wouldn't be very deep, so having a bath is a waste of water. And also, I've got a lot of equipment to clean, so nice nice warm water to clean my equipment with. Brilliant. So there's my bucket of stuff that needs cleaning in there, catching the drips. Obviously this mash tun, I had a bit of a boil over. I put the lid on and things started to boil over. Brewing is actually a very dangerous game. You can't turn your back on boiling wort for a second. You need to be watching it the whole time. Failing that, don't put the lid on. Just no need to use the lid during the boil at all. It's fine.